And we have a quorum, so we're good to go. We'll reconvene and back into item 10, which is the Auckland Transport Update. So Dean is on his way up and just acknowledging Richard, the chair. And Dean's bringing up a support crew. I'm sure he's not lonely. So welcome, Dean, and let's go with Auckland Transport Update.
Yeah, kia ora, and thank you very much, Chair and Councillors. Always good to be here and to listen into the lively discussion and debate that we've had so far today. What I thought would be useful in terms of update today, you'll see we've got an agenda there, and we will come to that. I'll do the first 4 or 5 items, and then Simon Buxton will join me for the network improvement and safety parts of the network. But I thought it might be useful, given the interest in the new speed rule, to actually spend a few moments at the beginning just giving you an update on that. So today I've got with me Gavin Scott, who's our Chief Legal Counsel at Auckland Transport. He will give you a legal perspective on what our obligations are and also what our potential liabilities are under the law. And we've got Teresa Burnett, who leads our transport safety team, and she will give you an update on where we're at with the speed rule and changes associated with that, and what we're proposing to do in terms of engaging with communities around what new speeds might be, where they choose to revise them again. One thing I wanted to, so that's what we'll do on those ones, but can I, in prefacing this, can I acknowledge we are very aware of the concerns of some parts of our community. And we know that they're nervous about these speed changes, and our commitment is to work with them in the context of the new speed rule to see what the community position is, along with the local board and ward councillors, of course, in terms of what speeds might be into the future. And can I reassure you 2 things? One is that Auckland Transport takes a safe system approach. So speed is one element of a safe system. It's not the only element. Infrastructure is an important element. Calming measures are an important element. Education is an important element. And the other one is, there's been some concern expressed by a few that we're not taking a high engagement approach. We're doing this behind closed walls. We are not doing this behind closed walls. We took a high engagement approach when we first worked with our communities as to what the speeds would be, which is why we are confident in them. And then we're taking a high engagement approach with our communities around what the changes might be that affect them. And Teresa can answer questions on that, but can I reassure you, there's nothing here that is not available in the way that Auckland Transport has approached this issue of change that is not being worked through openly with our communities. So on that note, Gavin, can I invite you just to provide your great wisdom and legal insight on what our obligations are under the rule, and then I'll, Teresa, invite you to speak. Thank you.
Thanks, Dean. Good afternoon, everybody. My team and myself have been advising the board and the project teams on the speed rules for about 12 months now. I think the one that's most contentious, and it's what everybody's interested in, and I've been involved in many responses to different members of the community on this, is the so-called reversal rule. Now, it's actually really simple. It's actually a factual assessment. It's not really, there's not much clever legality around it. Basically, if a road became 30 kilometres since the 1st of January, and a reason, not the reason, but a reason for the change was a school was in the area, that's caught by the reversal rule. And our project team has done that factual assessment across the 1,500 roads that were potentially affected, and they've come to the conclusion that a vast majority of them are caught by the rule. And that's based on an assessment of the consultation materials and our engagement with the public when we actually brought the speed rules down. So I just wanted to be clear on that. There's also been a lot of correspondence and talk that other councils have taken a different view, that there's a different approach that can be taken. I've discussed this with NZTA's legal counsel, the Ministry of Transport, been in touch with Hamilton City, and in essence, why they're different is their factual assessment is different from us. They have made the factual finding that a school in the area was not a reason for the reason that the speeds went down to 30 kilometres. So we've taken the approach based on all of the material we generated through our consultation processes when the speeds were dropped, that we can't stand behind that finding. So we feel in a position that by the 1st of June, we have to do that reversal. So that's quite simply the position that Auckland Transport's been advised on, and we have spoken to various other legal teams in the country just to see if we've missed something, but in the end it comes down to that factual assessment.
Can I also ask you to comment on some debate around how we handle change in speed with contemporaneously dealing with other safety infrastructure, and also are there particular liabilities that we might attract? It might just be worth giving some comment on that too, Gavin.
Yeah, sure. So obviously our board throughout this process is well aware of the safety implications of changing speed limits. And as Dean said, speed limits is just one aspect of the overall safety equation. In terms of this particular reversal rule, looking at the obligations of Auckland Transport and our board, the basis of the rule, which there is no appetite in central government to change and provide exemptions for, are the key policy provisions of the rule. Our obligation, and what we're already looking at, is we've got monitors on some of these roads that are going to go up already, and Teresa can talk about that. But in terms of the engineering solutions, which you all understand are a really key part of safety, we are not in a position where we can implement them at the same time as the speed rule change. We don't have the time, the project, we've got 1,400 roads to change. And so when you look at our obligations under the speed rule and our broader obligations, yes, our board is considering all those matters, and I think Teresa can talk about that when we talk about the future.
Okay, thank you. Teresa.
Good afternoon, everybody. So as Dean says, we absolutely hear and understand some communities' concerns about the reversals. And so the team and I are working on a plan about how we manage speed.
Sorry, I'm just struggling. Can I get you to bring the microphone a little closer?
Sorry,
Thanks.
I do this every time. Too softly spoken. Can you hear me okay? Excellent, okay. So yes, we have heard our communities, and we are committed to working very, very closely with them going forward. From the 1st of July, so all of the reversals need to be done. We were given a deadline of the 1st of July, and the team have had to work incredibly quickly to meet that deadline, and they are on track. We will most probably have the reversal done by the 19th of June. So going forward from the 1st of July, we can start to work with communities and local boards about how we manage speed limits. So we've got a couple of options. Under the rule as it's written, there are quite a few data points we need to collect. We need to collect and gather a lot of data and information on a road-by-road basis. So given that we're having to reverse about 1,400 roads, it's actually quite a lot of work there. But our plan at this point in time is to come and talk with local boards and communities about issues that are happening in their area. Also, we're marrying that alongside the other work we're doing around the engineering. And we've put 2 dedicated road safety engineers in to work with schools. So they've been busy working with schools about what's happening outside the school gate to help mitigate the issues they've got there. So we will be able to circle back at some point when we've got a further, more detailed plan about what our consultation process will look like. Anything else you want added? Sorry. Yes, so once we've finalised our plan and what the consultation will look like, understanding we've got quite a number of communities to work with, we will circle back and share that plan of how that will work.
Okay.
Yep. Okay.
Look, happy to take questions, but what we thought we might do, councillors, is continue through with the presentation and take all questions at the end, if that's okay. So just moving to more general items. You'll see some highlights here around things that have been happening. Obviously, the Auditor General report on public transport reliability, you'll have been aware of that. There was various coverage over it. We found the findings quite pleasing the last few years. They have noted the improvement, and also as you get with any objective third-party review, you also find things you need to focus on, which we agreed with on the way through. So we've got a continuous improvement program, and I'm sure that Stacey will be able to talk about that shortly. You'll see our continued electrification of the bus fleet. Our electrification of the bus fleet continues with 44 more electric buses in place. You'll see the GI to Tamaki shared path now underway. That contract's been let. The construction's occurring. I thought I might get a cheer from one corner. You'll see too that we've got some really important work there in terms of engaging around network optimisation and network improvement projects and rail bridges in GI, Takanini and Tamahia. And Eastern Busway continues to go very strongly. We're really pleased with that project. We've had both the Mayor and Minister Simeon Brown out in the recent 4 or 6 weeks, and we hope to have Minister Bishop out shortly or later this year to do associate with an opening. You'll see some projects here just representing progress made across the Reef Road or Rahihi flyover. You'll see the ferry dolphin piling at Half Moon Bay as we improve ferry facilities, and you'll see some network improvements. I had the privilege of going out and seeing at the McMullen and Wing yard the new electric ferries. You'll see a picture of it there in the bottom right hand corner. These are coming across. We expect the first of those 2 fully electric ferries to be dropped in the water next week, with testing and commissioning started, due for launching into service later this year. Some more projects there you'll see. Slip repairs, growth planning, road safety works. May Road is the most recent example, and continue work on ferry infrastructure. You'll see the Devonport Pier 2 concept design there. One project I want to draw to your attention, this is in anticipation of CRL, is the Vincent Street corridor improvements. The philosophy here is that significant bus movement will occur down Vincent Street into Albert Street and downtown. You'll see that on the left-hand picture there, the future bus and rail network, and you'll see the parallel cycle network image. Most importantly, what we want to do is get the new bus network in place later this year in anticipation of CRL going live at some point next year. That way we change the pattern and the travel behaviours well in advance. So day one with CRL, people are already used to what the pattern is. It's not an other change. We are in close discussions with Watercare. They're doing work on the Orake water main. You'll be seeing evidence of that in downtown Auckland around Wellesley Street. There's further work to be done up around Merrill Drive and the intersection there with Vincent and Cook. We are working with them on the timing of that so that it's pushed well the other side of CRL go live. And we've got general agreement that would be the case. Otherwise, we'd be opening up Vincent Street for high frequency bus services in the order of 1 a minute, and then we'll be closing it down to do main works. Not good timing. I'll leave this slide as read, but you see the outcomes we're trying to achieve in the way that we're looking at those both infrastructure and bus network improvements. Level crossings, so I noted this came up in the discussions earlier around CRL. An update on where we're at. and just the reassurance that we've already committed to bringing regular updates, Councillor Fletcher, into this forum so that you can all understand and continue to ask questions and therefore gain confidence in how we're approaching level crossing removal. On the left there, you'll see an update around Takanini and Glen Innes. We're well into design. We have got, we're in the market looking to procure both design and construction services, and we're very focused on taking advantage of the block of line that we've agreed with Kiwi Rail, particularly over the summer period, but into Easter next year, so we can take advantage of what's already been agreed. You'll see there the Takanini crossing, so design and consenting, as I said, is underway. We're into engagement with landowners. There is a significant amount of purchase required to provide for the footprint. I'm very aware, though, that if and we've been in discussions that we're looking to absolutely minimise the footprint we need to deliver the level crossing removal. And the intention there is to help, to the extent we can, control cost. The Western Line rail level crossing removal program, I know, is of great concern to many, and it is to us as well. And we have started engagement with local boards and councillors on what we understand, both the constraints are, but also what the congestion modelling is. You had a discussion about congestion modelling on the rail network, but we've also looked at what the impact of train frequency is on the road network. And those two things are informing us around the timing and sequencing of level crossing removal along that Western Line. Some of those level crossing removals are very challenging. Not to say that Takanini isn't. Maori outcomes, so we're always pleased to be able to report on where we're at with that. You can see the progress of spend as a percentage of total capital value. The spend is over the 3% threshold, which is our SOI target, and you can see the dollars that relates to. This is at the end of the last quarter, so we've still got another quarter to go, and you'll see, whilst the percentage might remain similar, the hard dollar number will continue to climb, and you can see also where we're at with ongoing engagement with iwi as we develop Auckland's transport network. On that note, I'm going to hand over to Simon Buxton, who's going to give you an update on network productivity. This is a bit of a deeper dive, but it's an area of great interest by request. Thank you, Simon.
Kia ora, good afternoon. So this is the regular update. We bring this forum every 2 months on network productivity, which encompasses those 6 work streams up there. I'll take it as read, but I'm going to highlight a few things, and then we are going to spend a bit more time today talking about safety on the network. So network optimization, so they're all commitments in this year's statement of intent. You can see by the green on there that we're on track to deliver everything we committed to in this year's statement of intent. I know there's always conversation about special vehicle lanes and how we can do more and quicker. So this year we've delivered, so there's already a base of about 150 kilometres on the network of special vehicle lanes. We've added in another 5 kilometres plus this year. We're doubling the target for next year to 10 kilometres. So those designs ready for next year will allow us to put more in. The process at the moment to go from initiation to delivery of a special vehicle lane can take anywhere between 12 and 18 months. That includes consultation with local communities and boards. So we're looking at how we can make that more efficient, but also the pipeline is coming. That's why we can get more and more in each year going forwards. But just as a reminder, there is that base 150 kilometres there as well. We will make special vehicle lanes a focus topic for the next TRIC meeting. Then some other things on optimization. There's always conversation, particularly with members around the room, on loading zones. So we are looking at how we can be more dynamic with loading zones. There's the example on the screen at Kingdon Street in Newmarket, which we think might be New Zealand's first dynamic loading zone. So we can use it for the road space there for different purposes at different times of the day. So NZTA have helped us fund that. And as you can see, it can be for loading zone or for paid parking or as a clearway, depending on the time of the day and the best use best utilisation of that bit of road space. So we are always looking to be more dynamic. The road space is limited, the city's growing, servicing needs are growing, so that's the type of thing that's an innovation solution. I'll probably take disruptions and event planning as read, but that's an example of some of the disruptions, significant disruptions on the network in the last couple of months and the next couple of months, and we're always working with our partners to plan them in the most efficient way and to communicate with the public. There's always planned events such as Symphony, and there's always unplanned events such as cyclones, but our teams and our partnerships with council and other authorities and emergency services are strong. And then safety is a key part of network optimization, because of network productivity. We're always trying to keep the network flowing, moving, but also safe. And as hinted at in the previous part of this update, there's plenty we're doing all the time to keep the network safe, from education to engineering, and we've got some great new tools, such as the local board dashboard, and Teresa's just going to spend a few minutes talking through some of the highlights in the safety program, and then we'll conclude for questions.
Thank you. So, as we said earlier, speed limits are one tool we had for road safety, but it's not the only tool. So we do have the road safety engineering program, which is 80 million over 3 years. And what the team do is they have a risk-based assessment. So we don't chase black spots. We don't wait for crashes and harm to happen before we go and fix the network. Yes, we look at the data about crash harm, but we also take a predictive model in the same way you do with health and safety in a workplace. So here's a type of example of the kind of work the team does. Just a reminder that about 50% of road harm happens to people travelling outside a vehicle. So hence pedestrian crossings and speed calming are really important features of our work. We have the community transport team, and they do a lot of work with the community. They work with local businesses, they work with marae, and they work with school. So they'll go in and work with the community who have a particular issue and help educate and help them understand and look at what they can do to improve safety and how people use the network around their local area. And they do a huge range of work. They help people make sure their restraints are fitted correctly for their child seats. They do school safety. They do work with young drivers around driver licensing. Again, young drivers massively overrepresented in harm on our network. So a really important group that we work with. Another part of our work is the advocacy. So I mentioned young drivers. At the minute, there's a consultation open for the graduated driver licensing system, and we put together a submission on that. It's about keeping young people safe and giving them the right tools and experience before they kind of hit the roads. We've also recently produced the local board crash data dashboard, so that we've taken that to local boards and they can have a look in their area and see what's happening in harm, and it will help them with their local decision making. And also we do a lot of partnership work. So recently we've been working with the police, who under the GPS really upped their game around breath testing, and we support them with the marketing and evaluation of that piece of work. And here's just an example of the type of work the community transport team do around checkpoints and making sure child restraints are fitted correctly.
Okay, thank you very much. That's the end of the overview, and we are more than happy to take questions. Over to you.
Thanks, team. First up, Angela.
Thank you. I just wanted to, excuse me, ask a question of legal. I didn't quite get the bit around Hamilton. You said they used a different, I've forgotten the word you used now, if it was a perimeter or factual finding. You used it, there were different factual findings. So what was the difference between Hamilton and Auckland?
So, sorry, the question was a bit muffled, but I think I've got it. No, the Hamilton approach was based on the factual finding that a school in the area was not or the reason for why they reduced the speed. So therefore, they took the view that they didn't need to reverse.
So just to follow up, and that's okay. So why didn't Auckland Transport take that approach?
Based on, and Teresa can talk to this, but based on what the program team went through, all of the materials that we issued to the public and talked to at the time that we did, our speed reductions, basically nearly every piece of collateral has a school kid on a bike, yeah? And it talks about school safety. I'm not saying that that's good or bad, but we don't really have a credible basis to say that a school being in the area is not a reason for the change.
Yeah, just further to that, so we did the speed setting in 3 tranches. And the second 2 tranches were very much around communities and schools, and Gavin's right. Schools were at the heart of our speed reduction campaigns and our comms and our messaging and our consultation.
Were there projects in some of the wards where it wasn't necessarily driven through those 3 tranches, but it was from local community projects?
So when the rule first came out, we looked at what we'd done in terms of reversals from 2020, and we had done 1,700 roads, and we assessed that, and we took out the roads that we felt that did not need to be reversed, didn't fit the criteria, and that is what brought it down to 1,464.
Just one question for Barry. Did Auckland Council take any independent legal advice on the interpretation of the road rule, or have we left it for Auckland Transport?
I'd have to go and check that one. I don't believe so, but I would need to just confirm that. But there may have been some interaction between Auckland Council's legal team and Auckland Transport.
I'm not sure whether Auckland Council independent legal advice, but the legal advices we used are used by Auckland Council. So we've got an independent legal opinion, and the lawyers that provided that are the same lawyers that Auckland Council uses. So I'd be confident that the advice we received would be exactly the same advice that Auckland Council themselves would directly receive. We can make that opinion available. I'm looking at Gavin here before I offer a legal opinion to anybody apart from ourselves, but we'll consider what we can make available.
If you could, thank you.
And Barry's going to check in with our team. Shane.
Yeah, thank you. Got a number of questions, some of them answered by Councillor Dalton, which is good, but just so I can draw a fine point on it. So if we lowered speeds to protect children, it gets captured and the speeds are raised. If we didn't lower speeds to protect children, then they stay the same. Is that correct?
That's how the rule's drafted.
Wow. Okay. Okay. Look, just while I've got you, in terms of asking a question around the legal elements of this, does AT have a duty to its users on health and safety of the roads? And are you concerned about any increased legal risk in raising speeds?
We've looked into the application of the Health and Safety and Work Act to our activities, and for an agency like us with such broad involvement in the transport network, the view is that the Health and Safety and Work Act does not apply to our broad activities as sort of road controlling authority. That just takes that act way too far. However, our board members, when they exercise their powers as a board, do have to consider safety aspects, and in this situation they've asked questions and been advised on the safety implications of speed limit changes right along, I think, Teresa. So pretty comfortable that they've fulfilled their duties.
Look, the only other thing I'd like to add to that, sorry, Councillor Henderson, is that the government has an obligation when it chooses to change a rule or change a law to consider the effect of that. And so we are, I think that's also a question usefully put to the government of the day when they change the law.
Okay, thanks for that. We've received a letter from all aboard at 8 o'clock this morning. I'm still getting to it myself, but I'm just wondering if you've had a chance to review it in advance of the meeting and whether you have any initial comments.
Just repeat, which letter was that? We've had some. No, that might sound...
A briefing paper from, it's sort of entitled Auckland Transport's Flawed Approach to Speed Reversals. So that's a fine point on it. So have you had a chance to review that yet?
So I've had a look at it, not in enormous detail, but I have had a look. And in terms of the questions around telling people what we were doing, so the rule came into being around September, October, and then the team had to go away and do the assessment of the roads. And so we put the results of that assessment on our website live on the 27th of February. So we got the information out to the public realm as quickly as we could, and we used the website to point people to that as the one source of truth. We've also sent memos to local boards, and we've offered up meetings with any elected member who wants to come and talk with the team who had concerns, and some people around this table took us up on that offer. And we have been talking with schools literally for years. So when all the first speed limits, we were talking with schools all the way through. And then when the new rule was proposed and it was still draft, we contacted all the schools to get their thoughts on it, and it's been a continuous conversation with them. So we do feel like we've done a lot of work. Oh, yeah, of course, and sorry, we did a trick workshop around speed limit changes in our proposed plan. That was on the 19th of March.
Yeah, as I said, I'm still catching up with a lot of the content of this letter myself, but there was one thing that stuck out to me. So just in terms of signage rollout, firstly, can I just ask, is AT happy with the signage rollout around schools and the performance there?
Not perfect, absolutely admit that. It was, as I said before, we had a very, very tight deadline to get a lot of work done. So we see that some of the signs aren't optimal. We're going back, we're having a look, seeing if we can standardise. The issue we had is we contacted all the schools about their bell times, and we came back with 10 different answers about when the bells change in the mornings. So it was a lot of information and a lot of nuance in it. So we're going back, we're having a look, we haven't got 100% right on every occasion.
Thank you, yeah, and appreciating that the time frame was not of your making, so appreciate that. But, you know, for example, just looking at things like the Victor Street example in Avondale, famous one, where you've got different days of the week, different times, all this kind of stuff. Are you confident that the signage put up around schools are compliant with things like font size and are legible for people?
That'll be part of the review when we go and reassess where we think we haven't quite got it right.
Sorry, Councillor, I will I want to reinforce it. Some of them, in my personal view, aren't particularly legible. We will change those. They're either going to be standardised in terms of font size, or we are considering where we would swap out more complex school start and stop times with a digital variable sign. So we've probably, Teresa's and I were discussing, there might be a dozen, maybe 20 of these signs across the city. Given the scale of what we've done, it's relatively small, but it's irritating, and the photos tell a bad story, but we will fix it.
Thank you so much for that commitment. I really appreciate it. Just one more on signs, because I've been aware of a school in my ward where there's been city signs covered over. They're the old school signs, right? They've been covered over for over a week with no signage in its place. So ostensibly there is no signage in that area, and it took them over a week to change it. So that's just a tiny example. But my wider question is, are you looking at reviewing contractor performance around the implementation of this rollout?
We will definitely do a roundup when this project is finished. So typically when they've been covered up, someone's come and staggered like 1 or 2 days later, and a few instances that time period has been longer than we would have liked, absolutely.
Thank you. Just two more. Thank you for your indulgence, Chair. Just moving on to the consultation element and essentially reversing the reversal, right? So can I just be super clear with communities that are really concerned, and in a lot of cases it's primary school principals, things like that contact me about this. We're embarking on a consultation period. Can I get crystal clear on what a community would need to prove to raise the speeds back to where they were before the reversal? What are the checkpoints that they've got to meet?
Okay, so here's what we need to look at as it's specified in the rule. We need the role and function of the road, how the road is used, including different types of road users, why a speed limit change has been proposed rather than a different speed manager intervention, a cost-benefit disclosure statement, which estimates the safety impact of the proposed change, number and severity of crashes, estimated impact of the proposed speed limit change. We also need to include estimated time impacts of proposed speed limit change, includes current mean operating speed, estimated mean operating speed, and the impact of the proposed speed limit change on individual journey time, collective journey time, accounting for average daily traffic volumes. So when I said it's quite a lot of information we need to gather per road, so that's how it's written in the rule at the minute.
Goodness, so that's going to be a challenge to communicate to the public.
Yeah.
Are we planning to communicate this huge list to members of the public that actually are going to target their arguments to meet these requirements? How are we going to do that?
I mean, this is public. It's a public document. So, as I said earlier, we are still working out how we're going to approach this because we know we have lots of communities who would like us to get to things quite quickly. We also know that we've got to balance this quite difficult thing. The other issue we've got is we don't want to end up with a network that's all patchy with different speed limits, and it's very confusing for drivers.
Yeah.
So that's another thing we need to factor in. So we're still working through the details.
I really appreciate that. I've got one last one. Thank you, Chair. Can you use previous consultation as evidence?
I don't believe we can. No, I'm getting a no from the legal guy.
Is that right? Is that specifically excluded, or is that a policy decision that's been made?
Oh, it's not a... Yeah, we can clarify and come back.
Yeah, they've put in a whole new regime for consultation, and that's what Teresa was talking about. That applies from now, basically, if we want to change any speed limits. So we have to go through that process.
Wow. Thank you so much for that. Thanks, Chair.
No problem. Daniel?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you to Auckland Transport. The presentation has been interesting. I've got a couple of questions regarding the level crossing removal and grade separation. Dean, the rail over bridges that you showed, you're talking about the modular bridges. Is Auckland Transport looking at the modular bridges concept extended to the vehicular bridges that will follow for this particular project? I assume yes, but a bridge is a bridge. We just basically want to get people west to east as quickly as possible, and obviously to get this project done as soon as possible and as cheaply as possible. Can you comment on that?
Yes, so what I can say to that is the pedestrian bridges, absolutely, we're working with a modular design. On the road crossings, we're very cognizant of the 10 value for money principles. We're in the market now for a designer, and so that will definitely be part of the design brief. But I can't actually say that we will be moving to a modular design for the road bridges. I'll reserve my final comments until we've appointed the designer and we understand what will actually be the lowest cost way to move forward, given that each site will have slightly different geographical constraints.
Yeah, I understand that the sites are complex. My question with respect to the discussion around cost, I'm hoping that Auckland Transport is sensible, and if you need a wider footprint to get the projects done, that you do so, and that if there is a cost saving, it's obviously by completing the project in a timely way and then selling the surplus land that you don't need back to the original owners, or if they don't want it, putting it on the market. Is that your approach to this? I want us to get the land that we need, and then if we have surplus, to divest it at that point, rather than trying to go too skinny on the land acquisition start.
Yeah, correct. We'll obtain enough land to do the job well, and any surplus land will be disposed at the end. And we'll also be looking at, with local boards, any future development opportunities as well.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Reserve my right to speak.
Thank you, Daniel. Richard?
Thanks, Chair. Just back to safety. So back when it was actually us that kicked off Vision Zero before the government, before the last government did, and that was because we had until 2012 we were dropping, and then we had a ridiculous kind of hockey stick spike of deaths and serious injuries. So back then we said by 2030 we expected more than 7,000 people in Tamaki Makaurau would be killed or seriously injured if we didn't reduce the speeds. Do we have a new figure now we're reversing these on how many deaths and serious injuries we expect? Because we obviously measured it then and have seen a drop, but
So we haven't done modelling in advance. So what we've done, as Gavin said, we've got monitoring down for 150 roads, and we're going to keep track of the mean speeds. And then we've always got the CAS data that we look at as well. So our plan is, once we've monitored it for a little bit longer, obviously it's very fresh, that we will evaluate that and then we can take a decision then.
thank you. When, and I know I've asked you this before, Dean, but the continued confusion between who's at fault here. So according to all the statistics and all the data and all the reasons why we unanimously supported the direction for the speeds several times, last council, this council, was to reduce deaths and serious injuries. We know that increasing these speeds will lead to more deaths and serious injuries. It's not a guesstimate, it's actual data. Who is liable under the Safety and Health and Safety Act? Like, is it just the minister? Is it we tell everyone that those kids died because of the minister hasn't changed the rule? Or is it us? Or is it your board? Or is it you? Because someone is responsible for all these new deaths and serious injuries. Because the data says 30 km versus 55, 50.
Yeah, look, there's a legal position and there's how I feel position. The legal position is coming, and I guess, Gavin, you'll just reiterate what you've already shared. Yeah.
Well, we're in a situation where the central government has passed a law that we need to implement, and all of our duties and obligations need to be looked at in that regard. As you know, New Zealand doesn't have personal injury litigation, unlike other countries, due to ACC. And so in terms of liability, really, our lodestar is to look at the Health and Safety Act. You know, you'd argue that the work that we do constitutes work under that Act. And, and that's how we apply it in terms of our contractors that we look after on the road and our obligations. But in terms of people in the public realm, that is beyond our obligations under that piece of legislation. So, again, we are implementing a law, a valid law that's been challenged and it's valid from the central government. We're a public agency. We are doing what we need to do. Our board has taken into account the safety implications of the change and the reversals, and that's the work that Teresa's doing on a forward-looking basis to basically run through that whole issue again using the new consultation procedures that we have to apply.
And I know the board and Auckland Transport opposed the changes, and so did we, 18 votes to 3. Is there not any way that we just stop this? Like, what actually happens as the government, because Minister Bishop has told many of us that, yep, if the community supports it, keep the speeds in place. You've said legally that's not actually what you can do. But what happens to you and us legally if you do not change it, if we accidentally save a bunch of kids' lives? Like, I'm not being churlish. This is literally what will happen.
I'm saying that people talk about what the minister said, but we cannot get any clarity out of that ministry or the NZTA to back up some of the statements that the minister said. They basically said, we've promulgated a rule, that's government policy, it went to the election, we expect you to implement it. And that is the approach that we're taking as a public agency.
Yeah. But if under the Land Transport Act or other acts, or just the moral obligation, if we don't change it, what happens to us? You're not coming, like, what happens?
We're complying with a valid law of the government of New Zealand, as both AT and the council. That's what we're doing. We're implementing a law, valid law of the government of New Zealand.
I think the distinction here is, if I can just make a couple of comments. First one is, if we flip it and said, look, we don't agree with the law, we're not going to implement it, we'd be having a whole other discussion. because we would be acting illegally. So we can't do that either. We've implemented the law, what we, as required of us, and I don't even think this governing body could pass a resolution telling us not to implement it, which is an option, but I just don't think as a governing body that that's what you would choose to do. What we are doing though, because we feel the obligation to keep people safe, we agree with you, well, we always have. What we're doing is we're looking at safety as a system across the network. Speed is one element, and Teresa outlined the other components that go to that. So one outcome of this law may well be that we have more safety infrastructure in our roads. That is a realistic proposition. So we end up spending more on capital and interventions on our road system to ensure that local roads are where communities expect them to be. That's a realistic outcome. So, but that's part of the safe system approach. But we can't not comply with the law as it's put before us, and we've had to be very honest and factual about the basis for the original changes.
And I guess the other question is, how quickly will we be able to roll out all this new infrastructure when the government, the GPS, cuts safety funding? So the issue is you're trying to say on 1,400 roads that are not safe, to make them safe, we'll put infrastructure in, but we don't have the funding to do so.
Yeah, so we've reflected on that too, and that's within the gift of Auckland Council and the government to determine how much it wishes to invest in enabling us to work with communities and to implement these other safety features. And this council chose to hold the local share, even though the government's contribution reduced. So you have that option as Auckland Council to maintain or grow your 100% local share in safe system outcomes. Yeah.
Okay, so last question, Chair. Are there cases that you're still looking at, because you've seen those examples where it goes 30, 40, 50, random gaps of 50 because there's a school in it? Are you looking at ways to regulate that or skinning down the size? Things like the Mangafo station and other stations that we're going to have a whole lot of pedestrians at are now changing back to 50.
Yeah.
Are we allowed to add different considerations now that the area might change, etc.?
So the rule as it's written doesn't give us the ability to put in 30 kilometres.
Ever again.
Not as long as we're working to this current rule, but we can put in 40s. So part of the work with the team and I are planning about those consultations, how we're going to talk to communities, is how those speed limits all fit together. Like I said earlier, we don't want to end up with a weird patchwork. We do need to take into consideration how the road is used, different use. So land use changes, is it near a school or marae? That will all be factored into those conversations.
Okay, John.
Yeah, first question, straight off, that when the electric ferries come in, I'm assuming we've got a fleet of about 27, I think, vessels, it says in your presentation. So does that automatically mean then that one or more, or 2, 3, 4 of the worst ferries then drop out? So we actually have a bit of an uplift in the quality of the vessels. Is that the consequence for the rest of the network once the electric ferries start rolling off the production line?
Yeah, correct. So the new vessels will replace end-of-life old vessels is the plan, and that will be a progressive process over time. Dean, did you want to add more to that?
We've got a draft ferry replacement program strategy before the board. We intend to take that through, that went through the subcommittee, it'll go to the board in June. We intend to bring a more full update on the ferry replacement strategy in July to this committee, so you can understand what we're now thinking. And then we're balancing the need to replace old fleet, Councillor Watson, with the affordability constraints we've got and the time to bring those to market. And yes, of course, there'll be a swap out process where it'll consider age of fleet, and it'll also consider the passenger carrying requirements across the network. So we will bring a more full update on ferry replacement strategy to this committee in July.
Okay. Just moving on to the first item in your review, which was to do with the Office of the Auditor General's report into public transport reliability. So I had a look at that report, and like a lot of the Auditor General's reports, I think it was, it was a very helpful one. It pointed out the challenges, pointed out things AT's doing well, and then made I think it was 5 main recommendations. So just my first question then is the intention to follow through on all of those 5 recommendations for a starter?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Absolutely it is. And so you would have seen that in terms of the performance has substantially improved over the last period. Many of the things sort of identified that's come out for improvement were things on our work program anyway. What this does is enable more focused resource to be able to focus on those things. Unplanned disruptions is always a challenge. And in terms of that, there is a program more on the communication side in terms of how we communicate and the speed of communications that's well underway in order to be able to improve that. The other big, I guess, focus area that came out, which will be no surprise to anybody here, is the safety aspect and customer safety, workforce safety, and again, we have a program supporting that as well, with more enhancements coming, which we'll be able to talk about in the next few months. We'll bring back.
Okay. Just the part of the report that that interested me, and as I said, it was very, it's very, well, I thought a very good report, as the Auditor General's investigations into parts of Auckland Council invariably are. But the bit that just intrigued me a bit was the monitoring of operator performance, which is obviously an important one for AT and for the communities. And it was quite a pleasing revelation on the one hand to know that Auckland Transport, the current personnel offering, if you like, seems to be reasonably generous towards ensuring that. So there's dedicated relationship managers for the operators, and operators can be required to attend a performance committee and forums. There's also an internal service change steering group and an associated working group. And then I think there was a poor performance group, which was looking just at the bus network. So you would assume with that level of oversight and personnel that that parts of the network work very well. So, if you take certainly some of the operators we're familiar with, where there just didn't seem to be any problems with them, it's a very successful and great service. Does that kind of sequence of groups and personnel then allow the ability to really focus in then on outliers, that then A, are they clearly identified really quickly, and B, then are they able to be put under the spotlight to the extent that their response is timely and immediate? Is that how that kind of structure is hopefully working?
Yes, correct. And I mean, there's always continual improvement on that as well, particularly with the real-time systems that support performance management, particularly in the ferry side. But yes, I mean, it is what we do aim to do is obviously keep relationships impartial in terms of the contract commercial side as well, for good reason, so that there is robust contract management against the commercial outcomes with a contract, as well as obviously supporting the performance of an operator, and they work together. Yeah.
And just final a question, and I just noticed in the report that that the poor performance group, as it's named, there's the plan to include that, to roll that out to the ferries soon, but not to trains. So I think that's a good move with the ferries. What's the rationale then for not sort of applying across all the PT modes?
It's more about that train is obviously a system in itself. It has a performance committee, but it's a standalone. There's not a group That's why it's articulated that way. So from a contractual perspective, there are the, performance group as well as the relationship, senior relationship management piece to it as well. So there's different layers, but that contract is extremely robust in terms of how that works as well. Obviously, we're working with Key Rail in terms of that reset of the Auckland Network Access Agreement in terms of its fit for purpose use going forward, and that's obviously a substantial piece of work in itself to make sure that the system is working better as a whole. Yeah.
And just finally, Mr. Chair, I would notice that in the Auditor General's report, this committee is identified as, as a mechanism by which the oversight, not just laying everything on AT, but this committee is meant to act in a way that ensures, some of the issues identified by the AG are followed through on too. Not just poor old AT getting it all the time.
Just drop your mic off. That's right. And before I knew wouldn't get through the day without stuffing this up. Someone just like to move this? Thank you, Wayne. Is there a second? Angela? Thank you. Right, now we'll get back into Chris Darby.
I love that line, happy to move. You got to say that with a smile. And he does. Thank you. I always struggle with the AT report, wearing the director hat and the councillor hat. So I have two roles to perform here. The question of the legality of the rule, that was raised by myself at the AT board, and Chair Richard was quick to ask you, Dean, to seek an independent legal opinion. It would be good to check whether that can be released. And Gavin, there were three parts to that question, and because I was, looking for opportunity within the rule, and trying to chase that down. And the first part, Gavin, was is there wriggle room in this? Is this rule written right? Is there space to explore opportunity within this rule? The other part was checking the direction of some other councillors. You've responded to that. The third part, I wanted to know, am I liable as a director of Auckland Transport if somebody gets mowed down because of this rule? And there was a response from legal counsel from Simpsons on that as well. I think it would be really good, and I think Councillor Hills was referring to that, the legal responsibility, if I heard you right, Councillor. I'm not sure whether you addressed that as coming from the Simpson Grierson he's a senior lawyer. I wonder if you could address that third part. I think you've addressed the first two parts, but the legal responsibility of AT directors, the findings there, and how that could possibly extend to the legal responsibility of this governance group as well, if at all. And then the second part of my question, it's actually one thing I didn't ask at the AT board was, where there is mention of a school being involved, that's the strikeout, right? Where there's mention. But did we ask for like a nuanced approach? In some instances, some of the speed reductions that we put in place through, I think it was particularly tranche 2, where there's a big focus on schools, and that was very deliberate. But there are others that are being reversed where there's a mention of a school or a mention of young people cycling or walking to school. Did we ask Simpson Grierson for a nuanced view of, like, the weight was this in this particular catchment? It wasn't explicit about school. There was mention of maybe walking and cycling. Did we go that far?
I'll answer the last question first. And Teresa's team, the program, did that factual assessment of our changes over the period to determine that. And the critical piece of language in the rule is the presence of a school is a reason, not the reason. It's as simple as a. And our view was the vast majority of our materials fitted within that category on any sort of objective assessment. We haven't done a case-by-case legal review. We relied on the program team to do that. But based on what the program team had found and what they reported to the board is what our legal advice has been based on, because it's a factual finding. Yeah.
So just to Teresa then, when you went through the program, you were looking for not just mention of a school, you were looking for a reason. Not just the mention of a school or walking and cycling to a school, you were looking for
The school was
a reason.
one of the reasons. Yeah. So if you look at when we did the speed limit changes originally, and we had a school in the centre, and you look at a lot of our maps, and the school is very much in the centre, and there's an area around the outside. What we did was we went, okay, children might walk 1 kilometre, 1.5 kilometres to school. So other jurisdictions have just gone, oh, it's this small distance. But we took the idea that we were also encouraging active modes, and we knew that parents and children wanted to walk to school. So that's why we've got the broader area. And it's really definitive. The school is either the reason or one of the reasons. And so when we went back and had a look, I mentioned the 1,700 roads and we got it down to 1,400. Sometimes it wasn't a reason, and we have not reversed those roads.
And going back to the third part of the questions, Gavin, do you want to just, if you can, I know it's legal advice, and we've got to be careful about, going public with legal advice. Are you in a position to tell us what the lawyer said about the responsibility of directors?
I'll try and summarise as best I can. I tried to answer it to Richard appropriately too. I think the starting point in New Zealand is we don't have personal injury litigation. We don't have the same duty of care arguments they have in the US and Australia. So it's very difficult to hold a director responsible for personal injury directly. And then the next layer comes down to the Health and Safety in Work Act. Okay, it's probably the primary piece of legislation in New Zealand to have a look at in terms of what would our directors, and I'm just talking about AT, I can't really advise councillors, but is we have to see whether that act requires us to take all reasonable endeavours to protect members of the public. So there's different layers of that for AT's work. If you consider our work on the roads, if we made a repair to a road that was abysmal and created danger, there could be an argument under the Health and Safety Act that we have some responsibility, and we have processes and systems in place to make sure that our contractors don't do that. Yeah. In terms of the general safety of the public on the roads, it's too broad a concept to fit within the terms of the Health and Safety and Work Act. Yeah. And I will genuinely look to see if we can release at least that part of the advice. I need to talk to Dean and my board, yourself as well. But that's the essence of it. Yeah. I hope that helps. Yeah. So the view was no, there's no personal liability.
Okay, Lotu.
Kia ora, thanks, Chair, and hopefully everyone can hear me. Most of my questions have already been asked and answered, but I do have a very practical question for Dean and the team at Auckland Transport. And I accept that, like you said over and over again, you are just abiding by the law, but you also do share our concerns for our high deer size and how speed contributes to that. So my question is, what then in practical terms are local boards required to do under this new regime if they do still want to reduce their speeds, and being mindful that the Minister has said that if communities do still want to have their speeds reduced, that they can do so. So what then is your advice, or are you able to tell us at this stage what local boards must go through in order to do that? Are you also able to tell us what kind of timeframes we're looking at, and then the cost of going through that process and who would bear those costs? If you're able to answer those questions. Kia ora, thanks.
Yeah, Councillor, we can't answer all of those at the minute. And question is not dissimilar to some of the others that have been asked. We're working through a methodology for engaging with communities and local boards, and the local boards will be right in the middle of all of this, along with the relevant ward councillors. We will come back to this committee once we've got a robust methodology in place. That will be maybe July, possibly August. But we just need to do some work because, as Teresa was sharing before, we want to not just take a road by road perspective. We like to take a spatial perspective. It could be ward by ward, or it could be town centre, or parts of a community. We'll look at it in an integrated fashion. In terms of timeframes to implement any speed changes, we'll be able to come back and give you a view of that. In terms of cost to implement those speed changes, typically through the funding process, that's 50-50 shared between council and government via NZTA. So I wouldn't expect any change on that. But then the amount that we can spend doing this is a function of what you both contribute to enable us to do that work. Okay, but we will come with more clarity. We just don't have it at this point.
Sure, I appreciate that. Thanks, Dean. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Lotu. Julie.
Kia ora, thanks, Chair. And yeah, sorry I've missed some, so hopefully I don't repeat anything. I've got a few questions, but just following up from what Councillor Foley was just asking, it's pretty frustrating that the speed limits are going to change before we know what the process is going to be for communities and local boards to be able to request that they return, or that they even be looked at or consulted on. So yeah, disappointing that timing doesn't match up. And how that may play out. The couple of questions around the speed stuff, and then I've got a couple of other ones. So I just wanted to understand, obviously we've talked about the fact that that there would need to be new infrastructure, and the fact that we don't necessarily have funding to do that on the streets where the speed goes back up. Have we done any estimates on how it will impact on traffic management plans, corridor access requests for those 1,400 streets, and whether that will increase TMP requirements, that kind of thing, because you're dealing with a different speed limit?
Okay, we're just checking. We've not assessed that. Can I, at this stage, because we're not clear which communities actually wish to have the speed shifted from 50 back to 40. So once we've rationalised that with those communities that wish to see a change, then we'll have a clearer view on what the cost of those, including temporary traffic management and corridor access requests are. But
sorry, I don't think I was very clear. Actually, sorry, those were two separate things in my head. I was thinking more generally about what the impact will be on TMPs for streets that were 30, which are now going to be 50. I assume the code of practice changes. I assume they might need more cones, more protection. That it wasn't specific to the streets that may then change back again. It was just a generic question. Sorry.
So under the code of practice for temporary traffic management, each utility, Auckland Transport, Healthy Waters, Vector, whomever, is required to take a risk-based approach. So that would be particular to the area where the work's occurring. It may not result in more traffic management, and it may, depending on the community immediately adjacent to those works. So we haven't done a unilateral assessment of what that impact might be, and look, the honest answer is it'll be risk-based, location by location. That's the expectation, and that's what we expect, whether it's associated with those roads that have had speeds increased or any road on the network.
Thanks. So increased speed in many of these streets, not necessarily all is what I'm hearing from you, will potentially result in increased risk, therefore possibly increased TMP, which may, for example, look like more road cones. Is that a fair assessment?
It could do. It could do.
Yeah.
It's a function of many things, but that is one of them.
Okay. And so the other question I have in this space is around the, I think the liability question's been well exhausted, so I'm not going to go there. But I do look forward to more information and advice in that space. But what I did want to ask about is that the rule, noting it's a rule, not a law, but the rule allows for retention of the speed where land use has changed. And I wanted to know a bit more about how that was considered, and if, for example, forthcoming opening of CRL stations, whether there's been a busway added, whether there's been housing change around a street, was that something that was considered, and if so, how?
So it was absolutely considered. So when we had a look at the roads that we thought might need reversing, some of them we haven't reversed because the land use has changed. For example, developments and a much bigger increase in pedestrians and people on bicycles. So we've definitely factored that in. I can't speak to CRL.
No, I can't speak specifically to CRL, but those are typically highly pedestrianised, low-speed environments. But we have been considering change in land use. I actually went through a very interesting example of that change in land use with Councillor Williamson for a road out in his area where land use had changed adjacent to the road. That was a reason for it not going back to the original speed limit, being held where it was. So we do have examples, including in the Howick area.
I think it would be really helpful to socialise some of those examples so that people can sort of see what those thresholds are in terms of future land use that may happen and whether people can make the case. So turning away from that now, you'll be relieved, Chair. I had a couple of other questions. One is around the new electric buses. So how does AT decide, and I guess this is a conversation with the providers, but what is the prioritisation of how the routes that they run are chosen? I suspect with double deckers, we're just sort of slowly trying to change them, but particularly with the single deckers, I'm interested to know what is the decision making there, because obviously, every community is going to want electric buses. How do we prioritise those?
Absolutely, it's a great question. Look, to date, they have been a mix in terms of how we've rolled them out and by agreement. What we're trying to do, though, is obviously minimise diesel buses coming into the central city. That's the priority. That was a priority agreed with the committee years ago, or with council years ago in terms of that. So that is the overall goal. So as we go through procurement activity, what we're actually finding with Tranche 2 is actually most of those buses will be electric. And when we go to Tranche 3, when we go out to the market next month, what we have stipulated is that those routes that are particularly predominant in central city, they will be stipulated to be electric on day one, and then obviously a glide path in terms of options for the remainder.
So thanks for that. And so once those city centre ones are sorted, what's the next priority? Do you come back to us for some direction? How does that work?
Most of that sort of worked out during the procurement activity. So we're actually finding that a lot of what's being put forward is electric. It's kind of taking that sort of what I'll call renegotiation a bit away, because they all will be. There will still be diesels in the fleet though. And the priority is to work with what we have and then make decisions with you all when we get to those sort of conversations about if we have, as an example, 60% of the fleet electric, where they're going to be prioritised for the community. But the key thing is that's a real challenge because everybody wants them.
Yeah.
And so there's no what I'd call easy decisions with that. But what we are finding is that we're sort of ahead of the curve in terms of where we thought we are. We have 222 today. We're waiting on a depot fit out. There's going to be another 31. The buses that are coming in the next tranche are mainly going to be electric fleet. And I suspect that's what we'll find during the remainder of the activity as well.
Oh, and acknowledging that, it's a tricky one, and looking forward to that coming back to us for a further conversation about that prioritisation piece. I've got two more, Chair. One is around, obviously there's a lot of work at the moment, public consultation happening around transit lanes. And there's quite a bit of community pushback where the perception is that the T3 lane or whatever is always empty, and it's taken a lane from the cars and it's creating more congestion. We know, because we've talked about this many times, that actually that's not really how that works. So that those perceived empty lanes are actually moving a lot more people, particularly the ones where buses are using them. So I'm really worried that we haven't taken the opportunity with this current round of consultation to actually be telling that story to the community and making it clear, because I can completely understand you drive your car next to a cycle lane, you might see 3 cyclists the whole time, you feel like it's not being used, but actually the counter tells us that actually it's well used. So that, it seems quite counterintuitive. How are we going at telling that story about why these lanes actually help with congestion? Because I feel like we're not making that connection for people. We go out to consultation on them and we're setting ourselves up to fail.
So thank you for those observations. What we do is when we start at the beginning of the process, we look at sort of deficiencies and congestion on the network, and that allows us to realise where SVLs, transit lanes, will be beneficial. And then obviously through that process, there is a community engagement phase. So I think what I'm hearing from you is maybe we're not telling the story strong enough, but equally we are trying to balance local involvement and decision making as well. So I think there's some feedback there for us on how we sell the story behind the need for them, and just strongly outline the benefits and the outcomes.
Yeah, and I think when you tell people about the Northern Busway, people get it, right? But before the Northern Busway was there, everybody was like, it's a white elephant, blah, blah, blah. But then when you start to unpack it with people, they understand it. So we do have some examples we could be referring to too. So I'd be really interested in how we can do that better, and also how we can particularly reflect on the current live consultations. Are there any quick changes we can make that give people that information so they can make more informed submissions, or is that too late, too far gone?
I'll pick up the details of those ones with you and see if we can do anything.
Cool, thank you. And my last question, so this is something I've raised before. I think it was with the draft statement of intent that I raised it, and I see again, safety is the last one on your list in the way that you've presented this update. And it just, when we're having a conversation, a political conversation, yes, but we're having a conversation about the safer speeds, which is a safety conversation. The fact that AT seems to me consistently, at least on 2 occasions now, putting safety last on their list, it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel like it's the priority that you tell us that it is. So is there some reflection on that?
Thank you, Councillor Ferry. I think you made the point at the last committee as well. So that's why we talked about safety today first thing.
I wasn't here for the first part, but it's last on your presentation.
Yep. So we front-loaded today's discussion with safety. In terms of statement of intent and reporting on it, we'll agree with council, but I'm sure as a governing body, you would support us putting the safety DSI objective up the top of our SOI reporting framework. Yeah. More than happy with that. Welcome that. So we will more than happy to support those changes, and the some that we can start making straight away, which is what we've done today.
Great. Thank you. Looking forward to safety being more of a focus. Thank you.
Thank you. Wayne?
Got a few very quick questions. The first one, and a commendation first. I understand that there will be a report on ferries, and I've been asking for a report on these lines for, it's approaching a couple of years now. Can I simply make the request for that report that it cover off the capital cost of those ferries, that it covers off the operational cost of those ferries, that it notes any cost overruns, and I'd make a strong recommendation that it also identifies whether those ferries are actually fit for purpose. And I would suggest that the context around fit for purpose is the information that Auckland Transport is aware of, and that is that if you want a ferry that's efficient, that there are a number of factors. One is that it's light, so maybe some composite material. Two, that it's fast enough to foil, because that means it has weatherability and it's efficient. And then that it also has a motive power that is able to be converted to electric at some point, even if it's diesel to start with. And the reason that I'm identifying that is because I don't think that they're the ferries that we're building, and the consequences that we may well end up with ferries, one, that are very expensive and maybe have cost us an arm and a leg if they actually land, and two, they may be operationally very expensive. So that's part of the context, and I would hope that that report also indicates the part that the government has an interest in, because they subsidise the ferries, and in respect of the ferries that are being built that are shovel ready, I think there was a substantial amount of money. So that's really just a request, Dean, in terms of the completeness of the report.
So we will bring that, and there is a lot of rumour and misinformation about the ferry replacement and mode and efficiency, CapEx and OpEx. We will look to dispel as much of that as possible when we bring a report to you in July.
And the other question I've got just goes a little further to the City Rail Link and the delivery around that. Quite obviously, we have the situation, as Mike Lee has pointed out on many occasions, where we've got a number of operators that are clipping the ticket. So we've got Auckland One Rail, we've got Kiwi Rail, we've got Auckland Transport, conceivably various contractors and the like. Would it be possible to have a report at some point around how we might optimise things and make things more efficient, and that might include reducing costs over time? So I think that would be useful, and Mike Lee might want to make a comment around that.
Thank you. I think you're all aware this is a conversation that I'm quite passionate about when it comes to the operating cost of the rail system, and one we've had around the table here before. So there has been a review happening called the Metropolitan Rail Operating Model Review in terms of that. We did expect something to proceed to Cabinet on that. Recently it hasn't. I understand they're doing some more, MOT are doing some more work on it in terms of what that may or may not be. But I mean, it's fair to say that Kiwi Rail and AT are working very closely together, and you can see that improvement already in terms of the rail network rebuild and how we have worked on that together to minimise impacts. And yes, the impacts are still severe, but in terms of that, it's at least been planned, and we've been able to work through that. I mean, ideally, we can see how it looks from that commercial aspect and what's happened with rail over a number of years, and obviously a lack of investment has led to where we're at today, and getting it up to speed has been both cumbersome, costly, and detrimental to that customer relationship. We all understand that. So our goal is to obviously limit that going forth and build up that trust and confidence in the system. It's in everyone's best interest to do that, both as and Kiwi Rail. How we do that is yet to sort of really fully understand with that operating model review. But we need a firm sort of cost mechanism so that over the 10-year period we can understand how it's changing year on year, that we can forecast accurately. There is agreement and acknowledgement that we do need that and more visibility over that too. So it is a work in progress. It is very much alive and conversation in terms of continued improvement.
So just further to that, and with your indulgence, Mr. Chair, okay, what would be the timing of that rail operating model review? And I'm making the assumption that Auckland Transport has fed into that review. I don't know that we had any information before us around that. So just a couple of questions there, pretty simple ones.
Yep, I know we have talked about it here before. In terms of that, have we presented any information? There's not been anything forthcoming to be able to present to you. This is obviously with MOT. They then make a recommendation on changes to the minister, and therefore any type of change to what that looks like is then put in place. We expected something to be done by now. I expect it'll be at least another 6 months. That's okay. A continued focus right now from both parties' side is actually getting City Rail Link operating, and obviously the commissioning process of that is taking up a huge volume of energy, and you would have heard David today saying actually our focus is getting here right now. We do hope that there will be progress on this. It's really important when we go into the next LTP sort of side that we have that sort of firm view of what that looks like. Not only that, the total cost of delivering rail, and that we have a firm sort of packet for that.
The last question I've got, Mr. Chair, just goes to this matter of T3 lanes. And my question goes like this. Would it not be the case that you've got to consider T3 lanes, excuse the pun, on a case-by-case basis? Because where you've got a network and, let's say, part of the road space, and you've identified that most of the cars are single occupants, quite obviously if you put in a T3 lane and that had a significant impact on that limited road space, it could cause significant congestion, could it not? And a worst case scenario. And I'm mindful in that respect of a particular example, which is the Hibiscus Coast Highway, where I think we've narrowly averted a T3 lane.
So generally what we're trying to do is make sure we're having the most efficient use of the road space, and normally that's more people and vehicles, be it T3 lanes or buses, but there's always case-by-case examples. So.
Thank you for your indulgence, Mr. Chair.
Oh, look, my pleasure, Wayne. Joe.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for the update. My question is around comms and engagement, where we have an Auckland Transport project in our areas. I'm still having problems in Glen Innes with the GI Links project and the comms and engagement to our communities when we close the roads and they don't know about it, and they fire off angry emails to me saying, why was there no communication to residents that this road was going to be closed? And when we do close a road, we also close the road on the alternate route, so we're almost creating a choker hold for traffic to try and navigate through the road closures. It's still ongoing. Like, it hasn't, no matter how many meetings I've had with John Gillespie and the comms team, we're still having these issues in our community. And then I see a difference with the GI rail overbridge. That communication and consultation is different and far more effective, and I see them in the community as opposed to the other projects.
Yeah, look, I'm very sorry to hear about the Links project. I know you've communicated to us on that before. Can I take it away and I will ask again? What you're seeing on the rail overbridge project is our commitment to rethinking and redoing how we engage with our communities. And so we've had a fundamental change in approach, and I'm pleased to see you're seeing the benefit of that. Retrospectively getting it into existing ones is something that we haven't conquered, but I'll take away that feedback on GI Links project and come back to you. Thank you.
Thank you. And then I always see in your presentations communicating with local board, and then elected representatives, but I really want the communication with us as councillors, like the T3 lane that's proposed in Mount Smart Road. I haven't been able to support that because so far I'm just getting a lot of pushback from the community. I don't get a briefing like the local board gets a briefing. So the local board can back it or whatever, but when things don't work out well, we get the blame, like councillors get the blame, and we don't know anything about that project because we didn't get a briefing like the local boards get the briefing. So I just want to see a change in that. I don't want to do what the local board does, but then I'm seeing that we've got to be informed about the projects, because we've got to try and champion it. Yeah, it's...
Yeah, so we can double down and make sure that's the case. It's interesting. We've really looked to strengthen the muscle with local boards, and I'm really pleased with how we've been going. But clearly, we've still got some improvement to do around ward councillors, and so you've got my commitment. We will do that. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Mike.
Yes, thank you. The closure of Smith and Coe's has brought into a public view, a public recognition and concern the decline of visitation, of access, of foot traffic to the city centre. We know that AT has a authorised vehicle only policy to cut off access of private vehicles to Queen Street, and currently from, is it Wakefield to Wellesley. I understand that AT is now planning to extend this AVO down to Victoria Street, choking off access for private vehicles from Merrill Drive down to Victoria Street. Has that been signed off? Have AT management plans been signed off by the AT board?
Yeah, sorry, we're just doing a bit of conferring, Councillor Lee. Thank you for the question. Yeah, we can, I want to acknowledge the impact of years of construction on Central City, and I know that you're concerned about that. In terms of authorised vehicle only access, look, I've just conferred with both Stacey and Simon. What's happening there is, and I'll come back to you with the facts of the process because I don't have it all in hand, but what we're doing there is consistent with what this council has agreed through the City Centre Master Plan. And that's reshaped how movement occurs in the city. So what we will do is we will come back to you and confirm, because I think it's important for all councillors to understand the same, what the outcomes were that the City Centre Master Plan anticipated in terms of movement, and that we're talking bus movement, and also talking about pick up and drop off and parking and authorised vehicle only, and the process that we've gone through as we've implemented that. And I'll come back to you. I don't have all the answers at hand.
I appreciate that. The City Centre Master Plan is often cited. The last time it was publicly notified, the Queen Street area was considered the engine room. But now I see references to a low traffic neighbourhood rather than the central business district, or indeed the engine room. So it would, given what has happened, I think it would be helpful if these plans could be considered in the light of the damage that has been caused, because not only do we have vehicle access cut off, but as we know, and as I've mentioned earlier, PT has declined significantly, and that has meant a significant reduction in foot traffic to the commercial heart, the retail heart of Auckland. So it would be good for some reconsideration after the facts.
Why don't we, I'll work with Barry Potter. We'll work through how we provide a refresh in the City Centre Master Plan as it particularly relates to movement, vehicle movement that is, but also what we're seeing happen with pedestrian movement and cycling, public transport, private vehicle use, etc. Because we do have good information. We'll come and tell you what we see, how it aligns with the strategy, including forward moves, and then given that is council strategy, it will be up to this body, this committee or governing body, to determine what it wanted to do next if it wanted to change it.
Thank you for that. Just one more question. Is it true that AT has levied about $20 million in fines for the AVO from Wakefield to Wellesley Street?
I don't know. Didn't come prepared with that answer. I'm happy to come back to you once I've got the facts.
Yeah, if it's true, it'd be one of the most successful businesses operating in this particular area, I think.
No, I won't say anything, yes.
I'm sure you had something to do with it, Mike. Okay, no further questions, but just on that point, we have asked Watercare to actually come at the next meeting to talk about what they're doing in the CBD. And I was just discussing with Barry the potential for us to maybe have a discussion about how we might wrap some of the transport stuff in the central part of the city into that somehow, if we can. But a conversation to be had, but we do want to, it obviously comes up a lot. And so we do want to sort of have that discussion, get it out and have that chat. So thank you, team. You can step back. Open it up for comments. Chris?
I do want to comment on the speed limit. Now, there's been a lot of discussion, there's been a lot of emails coming in suggesting that Auckland Transport's not doing this, not doing that, and kowtowing and weak and buckling at the knees and all the rest of it. What people can't see is, you know, what's happening at the board. I can comment as a councillor. It's not for me to comment publicly as a board member outside of this forum. You know, that's not my role. But I just want to say that there has been quite a lot of grilling of the AT staff as to what our position is, what we can do, can't do, checking on the legalities, and then going again. I think the board has probably discussed this speed limit rule since it came in, probably at least 6 times. And each time we've gone harder asking our staff to look at this opportunity. Can we do this? And it's a bit of a shutout, as you've heard today, confirmed by legal counsel from Auckland Transport and the chief executive. And that's been checked independently. And that was a request of mine that the board acceded to, and it came back the same. So it's hard yakka, I can tell you. But it's a rule, and it's made by the government. And if we want to change this, I think the proper place to protest and wave the banner is actually in front of the ministers, the Minister of Transport. Admittedly, the new minister did not write that rule. It was the previous minister. But that's where it lies. That's where the change can occur. We will be embarking on community-supported speed limit changes. That's a long process as well. But of course, you know, the number that results is different. But I do want to, you know, assure the members of this committee and those watching who are advocating pretty hard for doing it the Dunedin way or the Hamilton way, I think all the stones have been unturned and we're getting the same message. It's not the outcome I want, as many as you will know, but it is following the law.
Thank you, Chris. Daniel? Well, maybe not. Shane?
Kia ora. Yeah. Look, just following on from Councillor Darby again, actually, that look, we can discuss how the rules should be and will be implemented, and I think it's right to do that as decision makers. But I just need to get just a couple of facts on the table regarding the speed limits, and one of them is that council opposed raising speeds 18 to 3. So this body opposed it quite clearly. The AT board and management have opposed it publicly. So that needs to be told. I think we need to be, you know, quibbling around the implementation, but they have opposed it. And we need to remember that, I think. Because the change, of course, has been imposed from above on us, on local government, from central government. That's just the way it goes. A wise person said once, centralisation, which is what this is, was, quote, a robbery of power and control from local communities. I won't tell you who said that, but it might surprise you. Because, look, when these limits were put in, they were put in street by street, with consultation, and now we're being told today, which is very disappointing, that we can't use that consultation anymore. That communities made themselves very clear all across Auckland what they wanted in their own communities, and that goes straight in the bin. Well, it's hopeless. I would encourage us to try and find a way to at least use that knowledge as best we can, because I don't really know what to tell West Auckland principals, West Auckland communities that have contacted me over the years and will keep doing so, saying our kids are unsafe. Kids need to be walking to school and they're unsafe and we need to lower the speeds. Well, I suppose I'd have to tell them I can't do that. There's just no way. Because you look, I asked the question earlier around the requirements that a community would. My mic got cut there for a second. The requirements a community would have to meet, as the list is so long, it took 20 or 30 seconds to actually read them all out. And I dare say that consultation, okay, we're going to do that, and I encourage that as much as we can. I hope we can change things, but I also hope that the St George Illawarra Dragons will win a premiership this year, and they're not going to do that either. Communities are not going to get the lowered speed limits that they want, and they will contact all of us and say, can you put some pressure on? Well, can't, mate. Sorry. Central government said that it wasn't okay, that their version of localism doesn't quite align with ours. I'm really glad through this discussion that we're looking at the signage again, because honestly, some of the rollout was shambolic. Looking at schools in my ward that had white tape over their speed limits for over a week. And then when that finally was fixed, then they had the wrong times for pickups there. So it was totally fine to go 50 k's at 3 o'clock with the kids coming out. That's not acceptable. And I'm glad that AT agreed with that and have committed to reviewing that situation. I think we need to have a few yarns about that. It's not good enough. And I know that there's been timing concerns, but it's just not good enough and it does not inspire confidence in the public. So I don't know why I say all these things, I suppose, because we're shouting into the void. Right? We can make all the logical reasoning we want, we can make as much evidence-based approaches as we can, but it's not changing anything. And I suppose that's why I'm saying it, because I'm so bloody frustrated, Chair. Thank you.
That's right, mate. St George could still come through for you. No other comments? Okay, I just want to acknowledge it was great to see Maraetai Beach School and the crossing outside it, because under the old speed rule it couldn't get the speed reduction. And so, yes, the rule is not how most of us want it, but nor was the old one. So a lot of rural communities were unhappy. So checks and balances. So it's been moved and seconded. Those in favour say aye. Aye. And against, carried. Next item is a status update on actions decisions. Where's Wayne? You need him? Thank you, Angela. Seconded. Desley, any discussion on that? Those in favour say aye. Aye. And against, carried. Summary of our information memoranda workshops and briefings. Thank you, Wayne. I was starting to worry. Seconded. Desley, any discussion? Those in favour say aye. And against, carried. Now, need to move that I'll move we go into publicly excluded so we can hear the item being referred to us from the Audit and Risk Committee. Seconded. Thanks, Desley. Those in favour say aye. Against, carried. We'll now take 5 minutes to clear the room and we'll be back at just after 10:02.
Mr. Chair, it's Daniel here. Can the